When most attempt to build wealth, they treat it as an exercise in predicting the future. They watch the market, try to time their entries, and let every dip or sudden spike trigger an emotional reaction. The highest net worth individuals do not rely on market timing. Instead, they utilize consistent, automated habits that execute regardless of daily market conditions. To achieve this consistency, we construct a deterministic capital architecture. A single stream of incoming capital is routed to remove human error. It automatically splits into macro pipelines for stability, then applies mathematical risk caps to govern active trading. This approach treats personal finance as a formal engineering problem, optimizing resource allocation while strictly bounding downside risk. Within this framework, financial success functions as the mathematical output of optimal, pre-planned resource distribution. The entire architecture relies on automation. Capital must be routed the second it lands in your account, ensuring no funds remain available for impulse purchases or lifestyle upgrades. The first macro pipeline routes exactly 50% of the total volume into a locked container designated for essentials, the hard-capped boundary for baseline survival, including housing, utilities, and groceries. If baseline living expenses exceed that 50% threshold, the system requires a structural reduction in costs, such as downsizing transport or renegotiating rent to maintain the ratio. A second tranche allocates 10% for rewards. This serves as a controlled release valve, allowing for vacations, experiences, and hobbies to provide sustainable psychological relief. Strictly bounding this allocation to 10% ensures that status-seeking or ego-driven purchases cannot drain the wider system. Satisfied, clear. Capping survival costs at 50% and ego costs at 10% leaves exactly 40% of all incoming capital protected for building financial resilience. Of that remaining 40%, 15% routes directly into a stability fund. This tranche provides a mathematical defense against unexpected, high-impact variance. To calculate the capacity for this node, we look at this specific calculation. A $1,500 monthly baseline multiplied by 5 months establishes a hard barrier of exactly $7,500. This node operates under 2 rules. It must be stored in a high-yield savings account with 24-hour liquidity, and it must carry 0 market risk exposure. Without this specific defense, a single failure cascades through your finances. If a primary vehicle suffers a mechanical failure 3 months after purchase, it demands immediate capital. If that capital is not available in a stability node, the system fractures. You are forced to take on high-interest debt, introducing new costs and compounding pressure into the architecture. A fully funded stability node prevents this. It ensures you are never forced to liquidate long-term investments at a loss just to cover a temporary emergency. The final 25% forms the growth pipeline, the core engine responsible for compounding capital over time. The foundation of this tranche flows into broad market index funds, like the S&P 500. This captures global economic output with minimal management. To maximize efficiency, these investments should be routed through tax-advantaged accounts, like a Roth IRA or a stocks and shares ISA, eliminating the structural drag of annual taxes on compounding returns. Using these legal structures is how the elite shield their wealth. Peter Thiel utilized a Roth IRA account to invest in high-growth companies, eventually turning a standard retirement account into a tax-free fortune exceeding $5 billion. While a portion of your growth capital is directed toward active market trading, the core constraints must tighten. Success in active markets requires a mathematical mandate where potential gains consistently outweigh inevitable losses. This equation defines the risk-reward ratio. It is the dividing line between systemic investing and reckless gambling. The ideal baseline is a 1-to-3 ratio. For every single unit of capital you risk, the target return must be at least 3 units. This ratio creates a massive statistical buffer. When wins are 3 times the size of losses, the trader only needs a 25% win rate to break even. Enforcing a strict risk-reward ratio decouples long-term profitability from the requirement of predictive perfection. A defined ratio is ineffective unless you also strictly limit the total capital exposed to the market on any given trade. Position sizing provides the mechanical governor required for capital preservation during active market participation. This readout illustrates the rule of downside bounding. From a total account value of $100,000, we isolate a maximum risk allocation of just 1%, or $1,000. We then apply that risk to the trade. If we enter at $500 and set a stop loss at $490, our risk is $10 per share. Dividing our total risk limit by that $10 gap outputs a position size of exactly 100 shares. If the market moves against you, the mathematical stop loss acts as a hard floor. It executes entirely automatically, severing the trade the exact moment the price threshold is hit, preventing catastrophic capital damage. Mechanically sizing positions and enforcing automated stop losses removes emotional panic from the process. It ensures the portfolio survives inevitable losing streaks. Financial resilience emerges from the systemic output of an engineered architecture. Automating macro transfers neutralizes lifestyle creep and guarantees a zero-risk stability baseline. Applying micromechanics, specifically position sizing, caps variance and isolates active risk within the growth tranche. Treat capital management not as a series of disconnected, anxious decisions, but as a rigid, self-correcting machine that protects you from yourself.